Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome, fellow patriots. You're listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm your guest host today, Liz Matory. Thank you so much for your open hearts, open minds, and all you do for the Republic. I had the honor, blessing, joy of meeting Kevin Jackson at the CPAC conference this last month, and quite frankly, it was an absolute honor. You all have been able to connect with him throughout the years, whether it's through the Tea Party movement or through his radio shows or all his activities that he's done on Fox News, etc. But, you know, when you meet him in person, honestly, I mean, I know that he didn't get me to, co-host and talk about him, but I just wanted to kind of like let you know how much I appreciate not only this opportunity, but mostly to be able to connect to someone like Kevin. I'll get into more of my backstory and why I am doing this and how I am doing this. But I just wanted to kind of reiterate how rare and how valuable a person like Kevin really is, not only to individuals like you, but to the overall sort of journey that we're all in together. What Kevin has done for me, for example, is to have this opportunity to guest host with him. Is really rare, if anything, especially in these day and age. There's a lot of folks who are out here, all about themselves, and as fellow Christians, it's not us, but it's other folks that seem to only be about, making a name for themselves, and that's it. Obviously, it's all about branding, and it's being able to share your message with more people, but this whole concept of being able to lift as you climb, right now, this is literally what Kevin has done for me. And again, I'll share my story throughout these next few sessions with you, but at the end of the day, I just wanted to, appreciate, kind of like the horse I rode in on. I just really appreciate the opportunity that Kevin has offered me to join you on this episode of his show. So, as I said, my name is Liz Matory. Some of you might be familiar with my random Facebook Live stuff that I've done. And I also wrote a book called Born Again Republican, available on Amazon. I am a convert to the conservative movement. I am a new Republican. I say a returning Republican, a born-again Republican, because as late as 2014, I was a raging liberal, very active Democrat. I worked for the Democrat Party here in Maryland. I live in Maryland now. I am a DC native, born and raised, and I know you can't tell this on the radio. I guess that's the power of radio. But I am a cisgendered identifying American of African descent whose mother is a legal immigrant from the Philippines. So, as you know, for all intents and purposes, I am expected to be a Democrat. When I grew up, in the middle of it all, in DC, going to a place like Sidwell, in a hyper liberal experience, I never, Never, ever expected to become a Republican. I never even thought about leaving the Democrat Party. I know you all are so familiar with this journey, right? Where, all of a sudden you're like, all this stuff is not right. You like I have been working a lot in community. You're going through education, you're fundraising, you're working with nonprofits, you're working in the government or outside the government, trying to sort of fix things, right? So, there's a lot of things that had brought me to here, but at the end of the day, what I have seen, what I have experienced, what I now know, I am literally on a lifelong mission to not only encourage more and more people to leave the Democrat Party, but to at least consider it, especially people like myself, people who have become so frustrated that they know that there's something wrong and they yearn, they want to learn that there needs to be a new experience, a new solutions, and they feel lost. If anything, I felt that exact same way, and whether it's through this, whether it's through my stuff that I do on social media, through my book and potentially new books, I'm literally on a mission for more and more people to know what's going on. I mean, if anything, knowing now what I know it's very difficult. I know that what I've been called, what I've been, blamed as being, I know Kevin is, I don't know if you ever get used to being called, an Uncle Tom or whatever, a traitor or what have you. But at the end of the day, with all this stuff, all this knowledge, all this experience, I know for a fact, and you know for a fact, that whatever we have to go through individually, it is so worth it. And so, if anything, I know that you guys have been listening to Kevin Jackson for a long, long time. But in my time with you, I would kind of like to share with you, how can we talk to folks who haven't made the switch? If anything, we need to share our message more so now than ever before, because we know what the left is capable of. And not only that, we know what we're about to lose. Now, everybody kind of talks about the sense of urgency, and I do believe, that 2018 is a critical year, just like 2016 was. As you know, our President Trump is only one person. And if anything, if we are really literally wanting to drain the swamp and save this republic, we need more and more people to open their eyes and, again, open their hearts and see what is going on. So throughout these next couple of hours, actually, I will share with you my journey, and maybe it'll inspire someone else new to the game, or, the people who are on the fence, so that they can kind of have the courage that it takes in order to break out of the bubble, or to, break out of the pack, because we need more and more sort of brave patriots. We need more because there's a lot at stake. So I'm going to hit you back in the next few, and I look forward to connecting with you and sharing my story and talking about some great stuff. So till then.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful 4-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
Jackson Radio Show.
Hey, fellow patriots, you're listening to The Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm your guest host, Liz Matory, filling in for Kevin today. Again, thank you so much for checking in and appreciate your patience, time, and effort, and of course, all you do for our republic. Yeah, so earlier I had introduced myself. I'm Liz Matory. I am, I guess, a new guest host for Kevin. And again, I appreciate and thank Kevin for this opportunity to connect with his audience. You guys are awesome. And at the end of the day, we have a lot of work ahead of us. So through these next couple of hours with you, I definitely want to share my story simply so that we can encourage more people to join us in this cause, this if anything, so that we can try to save our republic. It's literally now or never, guys. You know how bad it is out there. And, you know, my frustration throughout my entire journey, especially in the last 4 years, is, you know, everything I get to experience and see, the conversations I have, the connections, the people that I get to meet, it really frustrates me. You know, I'm wondering, why don't more people know this? Why aren't more of us, and when I say us, I mean American citizens, why don't we know more about what we now as conservatives are aware of? You know, the things that I was able to learn, you know, you really have to, you got to leave the Democrat Party, to be honest, in order to really get a better sense of what is going on. I live in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is right outside of the District of Columbia. You know, if you think D.C. is bad, Montgomery County, and in many respects Arlington in Virginia, this is where all the lobbyists live. You know, all the lobbyists live down the street from me, not necessarily right next to me, but down the street and around the corner. You know, all the top media folks, they live out in the county. You know, I grew up a year behind Chelsea Clinton. You know, the Obama girls go to my school or went to my school. My classmates were the children of, you know, congressmen and senators and, you know, the media elite. And even back then, quite frankly, whether it was when I was 9 years old or, you know, all the way through high school and in college, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let you know, and a little secret, they aren't the smartest. I'm not saying that they're not smart people. Many of them are, but it's really easy to realize how privilege kind of, it allows for a lot of leeway. So, you know, you're sitting in class, right? And you're like, man, you know what? If your father or mother weren't who they were, you probably wouldn't get into Civil. You know, I mean, let's face it, you know, if anything, that sort of privilege and or arrogance and or sort of, I was born on third base. Mind you, I'm not going to lie, I was born between second and third, so I'm not saying that it is what it is, but it's really interesting to be privy to how people grow up and their point of view and their perspectives. You know, we have such a shared experience, but as a person of color, if you will, in these environments, there's always the sense of, you're not seeing the full picture, bro. You know, like you're sitting there and you're like, you know, and sometimes, you know, the reason why I speak highly of my parents and their professionalism is the fact that I know for a fact in my sort of circles, there are very few of us still. You know, I mean, if anything, there should be more of us. And that's another, you know, mission that we are all on, is to make sure that we build out the pie and make sure that more people get to progress and to really excel. But, you know, they're still, in some circles, few and far between. So you're sitting in class or you're in these work environments now, and, you know, you really realize that the perspective, the point of view that some folks out there have is very narrow. And so when I talk about my parents, I really, you know, I pay, you know, honor to them, because if anything, now that I know how they raised me and how their parents before them raised them, we're by conservative principles. Again, I know I'm speaking to the choir. I know that I'm like well in the church right here within the tent, but all this stuff is like relatively new for me. And, you know, when you know that very many people who, Filipinos or Filipino Americans, they tend to be, you know, their mate. And so that's why I talk about my mom being an obstetrician gynecologist, because I know you listeners out there interact and interface individual to individual, patriot to patriot. You kind of get to learn and know and understand people on the individual level. You don't sort of label folks, but that's what they do. Like on the left, I am not Liz. I am not the child of my parents. I am the black chick. I am the kind of loudmouth black girl who doesn't know her place, you know? And another awesome thing that I love about being a conservative is that, and again, being a registered Republican is, you know, this is the first time that my counterparts, the people in the room interact with me as a fellow American. You know, before, it's all about labels. It's all about, what you look like or, what you assume to be labeled as opposed to the value that you have and your might, your individual ability. And I think that, that's kind of where we have to start. There is a fundamental difference between how we believe and what we think and how we interact and interface and see each other versus what liberals or the left or the Democrat Party thinks of people. Again, every single time I talk about this stuff, the people who understand are in it. They're like, yep, Liz, great, awesome, keep on doing what you're doing. We get it. Fight the good fight. But some folks, a lot of folks resist. And some of the folks that do resist are like, oh, Liz, why are you all about the labels? It shouldn't matter about party. It shouldn't matter about being conservative or liberal. And I get what people are trying to say. There's this no labels movement. Awesome. Great. Good on you. But I am a big proponent of identifying the problem first before you, act like it's not non-existent. Yes, it is a tough pill to swallow. Again, a lot of you have already swallowed said pill and you're totally fine with it. But the people who are resisting, and again, we'll talk about the resistance movement later, but people who resist, the reason why they want to act like they don't want to talk about the labels is that I think they don't want to admit that their own party or their own sort of philosophy is actually wrong. It sucks to, I don't know if I can say sucks, but whatever, I just said it again. It's unfortunate to know that people aren't willing to be wrong. I'm not absolutely right. I know that a lot of us make a lot of mistakes, but we all know that the Democrat Party has been taken over by leftist Marxists, and what are we going to do about it? You and Kevin and all of us here talk a lot, but again, we need to get more of the rest of us to, break out. We have to take a little break now, but I look forward to connecting with you in the next couple of moments.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. The Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Hey, fellow patriots. You're listening to The Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm your guest host, Liz Matory. Thank you again for checking us out. And again, thank you for your open hearts, open minds, and all you do for our awesome republic. Yeah, so we were talking before about the concept of labels and how the left uses them and how the right sort of uses, I guess, different ones, and the importance of what definitions are. And let's talk about the power of all these words. As I said, I'm a new convert to the cause. I'm a born-again Republican. I'm a recovering liberal, and I'm on a mission, like many of you are, and I know that Kevin is, to encourage more and more people to empower themselves with truth, because there's so many lies out there, man. You talk about fake news. Like, you can't even start about fake news when you have fake philosophy. Let's think about it. You have what is liberal, what is conservative, what do liberals do? What do conservatives do? I think, if anything, yes, there are people out there that purposefully confuse us. But if we, again, have enough knowledge to at least begin to start thinking again for ourselves. I remember when I first left, I was actually an independent for 6 months. A little backstory, I guess. I'm a little political. I have become more political over the years. I ran for a state position in 2014 as a Democrat. Congratulations to me. I placed last, so that means I was the most conservative Democrat out there in my district. And then in 2016, I was considering running for Congress because our Senator Barbara Mikulski, retired, and my congressman at the time, Chris Van Hollen, who is now the senator now, decided to run for her seat. So, as you know, definitely in Maryland and probably in your own state, incumbents never leave. And we could talk about term limits some other time. But, when that happened back in 2015, I actually was working with my best friend. And actually, I might as well go into it now. I said I was a DC native. I grew up with Marion Barry's son. So Marion Barry, a lot of you know who Marion is. Actually, his birthday was this week. He passed away in 2014, but he was a notable and or notorious mayor for life of the District of Columbia. Christopher and I were in the same class growing up. We've known each other since we were 2 years old, and he was my first love. When Marion passed away in 2014, Christopher and I reunited. We actually had another friend who passed away right before Marion died, and Christopher wanted to run for his father's seat on Ward 8 City Council. We all know there is a big, obstacle because of, his history, and we can talk about that in a moment. But, I was in D.C. For months working with Christopher to work with him to run a campaign to acquire his father's seat on the Ward 8 City Council. That's sort of when you start seeing how bad things are. So I was driving, from Silver Spring, up in Montgomery, literally only 6 miles away, down to the other side of the District of Columbia to Ward 8. Ward 8, unfortunately, still is the poorest region of the district. Yes, there is some diversity of economy there. I would say it's 97% American of African descent. Let's face it, a lot of our communities are still very segregated. That's something that we need to just acknowledge right now. But it also, things like, it's a food desert to this day, There was one supermarket that just opened up in the recent years. Where I live, there are 7 Whole Foods within a 4-mile radius. And, when you deal with sort of politics and policy, you have to go to resources as well. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, and please thank you for, being patient with me, but, I can't start talking about how I went through my journey without starting there. In that experience with Christopher, I was able to sort of, it was very jarring for me. It was very exhausting. It was very sort of taxing to my spirit, because I was absolutely frustrated and angry. Both of us were, because through that campaign, it was the first time I heard gunshots. I grew up in a way that never had to hear what gunshots sounded like. I mean, yeah, you're on the shooting range, that's one thing, but I'm talking about the gunshots that sound like firecrackers, and then somebody actually lights up firecrackers to, confuse police. And then you've got the ghetto bird or the helicopter to fly over to see where the shooting happens. All that stuff, unfortunately, is normal for some folks. Super not normal for me, and it's not normal for most folks. But again, that shouldn't be normal in our society. That shouldn't be a norm for any American citizen, let alone, our youngest I think when you work in nonprofits, you're like, okay, you're going to save the world and you're going to, work at schools and it's going to be great. And at the end of the day, all the children go back home. Like what happens when the kids go back to communities that are food deserts and, if they have enough to eat, you're trying to figure out, how can we make this right? What are we going to do this generation? Now that, Marion's passes away and my father passed away, and there's a lot of responsibility that our next generation has on us because, despite Marion's sort of personal issues that everybody loves to talk about, he literally was one of the most powerful mayors ever created, let alone black mayors in the United States. During one of his eulogies, they had pointed out that the District of Columbia, when we got home rule, a lot of folks don't know this, but forever we were governed solely by the federal government, and not until the 70s did we get some sort of semblance of government with the mayor and the city council. And so Marion was one of the, if not the first black mayors in the South that had actual control of his city. A lot of the development that you see in the District of Columbia, a lot of people want to give other people credit, but it was Marion that put a lot of that into play. And so again, going back to it, how I grew up in the District of Columbia, we were surrounded by all sorts of black folks. You had your janitors, you had your teachers, you had your, small business owners, you had contractors, you had construction workers, you had all the government was black. You had the doctors and the nurses. And so at the end of the day, when we grew up, there was no question as to what you could do and what you'd be capable of because you had examples of said, possibility. Marion, when he came on the scene, he went to Morehouse. He was, his elder was Martin Luther King, so he came in the city, sort of his claim to fame beginning was, the Pride Inc. Pride Inc. was a program that, he formed with a bunch of folks that I was able to meet throughout, the last couple of years. And their mission was to get folks employed, get them jobs, get them out and up and through a course of prosperity and opportunity. And even when we were with Christopher during his campaign, you connect with all these wonderful people in the city. Kid you not, every single person that said we remember Marion, number one thing that they remember, their first memory was that he got them their first job. And when you hear and you see the faces, especially of older men, that changed their lives. Or at the very least, it allowed them in their youth to know that they had possibility to better themselves. And again, we've talked about it before, and this is newsflash to me, someone like me, that's a conservative principle. That's the founding principle that we have here in our country, that regardless of how you were raised, who you were born to, and what your lot in life tended to be, here in this country, specifically now, as American citizens, if you keep your nose clean, you do what you need to do, learn what you need to learn, and believe in yourself, and yes, in God, you are able to change your life for the better. And that's the formula. That's sort of sadly, the missing piece for a lot of the communities that are struggling, when we were working through the campaign, and I'll have to take a break in a moment, but this was the piece that Christopher and I were working on. We didn't know that we had to commit fully to conservatism, but we knew that nothing else that liberals or nothing else that government could do would help. If anything, it was many respects the government that really messed up our community.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, fellow patriots. You're listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I am your guest host, Liz Matory, and in the last segment, I was talking about some dear people to me, the late Marion Barry, and unfortunately, the late Marion Christopher Barry. Right, so between 2015 and the summer of 2016, Christopher unfortunately succumbed to his addiction August 14th, 2016. If anything, unfortunately, as I said before, all the different sort of experiences that I've had over the last 4 years, I'm not going to lie, I have a lot more relatedness than I'd like to have with the greater society. As you know, our addiction problem is uncontrollable now. I appreciate the fact that now people are taking the time to appreciate that it's a mental health issue, not just a, you're a bad person issue. And maybe that sort of, compassion that we now give to people who suffer addictions. I wish that we had that sort of compassion as late as August 2016, because Christopher, unfortunately, his biggest fear, hugest fear, was to be remembered because of his addictions, which, of course, he inherited from his father, And, I really didn't plan on talking about this right now, but I don't really talk about it on a public situation, but I do think that more people need to understand that there is so much context and relatedness to what people are going through, that with Christopher, people always blamed him for his own issues, but always gave Marion sort of the benefit of the doubt. And of course, especially in conservative circles, everybody loved to talk about, the crack mayor, whatever. But, I guess that's the reason why I push so hard against the establishment, because, that there's one story, one news story, or one case, one criminal case. And in many societies and situations, there's a reason why certain things are focused on and others aren't. Christopher always felt like, everybody's trying to get him. He had a very sort of, it could be a legitimate concern, or it could be a bit of paranoia. It could be both. But think about it. Going back to it, there are very few second-generation civil rights leaders. Unfortunately, even Malcolm X's son was killed, and Marion Barry, and his legacy, unfortunately, Christopher... Oddly enough, that's the reason why I'm very pro-life now. Christopher's life, that was when he ended, from what we know of, he didn't have children. One of his girlfriends, did end a pregnancy because it was one of those unplanned situations. But, fast forward, if she hadn't had the abortion, there would have been a next generation. Mind you, of course, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's just really interesting to see that, for me personally, there are too many people who are dying, and lives are lost and generations are lost, and really hope has diminished so much in our society that I know for a fact that we need something drastically different, in my opinion. And of course, I'm not speaking for Kevin, but Kevin has spoken very adamantly and passionately about his journey and his belief and quite frankly the truth of the left. Let's be honest. I mean, there is a purposeful, strategic, deliberate degradation of society that has gone on since the 60s. A lot of our elders before did not want welfare. They knew that creating a welfare state, or for us meaning black folk or poor folk or whatever you want to call it, to be dependent on the government would take away our own, not only our own responsibility, but also our integrity. You know, we talk about liberties a lot in the conservative circles, but people forget that with liberty and freedom come responsibility and autonomy. And so, you know, when you're working in the middle of, you know, the harshest ways of living in many respects in our inner cities, you know, you wonder, how did this happen? And why has this been able to go on? And of course, you know, criticism and critique will be like, oh, well, Marion was, you know, was mayor for so long, you know, part of it is his fault. And perhaps it is. I'm not here to, there are a lot of people who think that he did no wrong. I'm not ever going to feel like that, because once again, I actually had to deal with the ramifications of, you know, trying to support a son who felt abandoned by a lot of people. And so that was a lot of our conversation too. But I just really, at the end of the day, all these things that are happening, I want to believe, and I'm sure you want to believe, and I'm sure, absolutely sure, that Kevin wants to believe that we have to find a way out of the mess that we have found ourselves in. And when I say we, I mean everyone, you know, whether it's taxpayers or, you know, teachers or children. I mean, we're all in the same boat together, you know. And I talk about the republic. Yeah, we are a constitutional republic. Our country, you know this, again, another big fact that I love to talk about as a newfound conservative is that, you know, why was our country made so, it was crafted in a way. And, you know, when you go up and you learn about your government and civics, you know, it's like it makes sense, you know, A and B and C and D and this happened and that happened and yay, you know, 4th of July. But when did it all of a sudden occur where now all of a sudden I, as an American of African descent or black, you know, skinned or black woman, now all of a sudden have to define myself as the other? You know, I've got a lot of criticism about calling myself American first, because, again, when you watch sort of that false philosophy of the left, they want to say, oh, you're African American and you're Black American, and there are other, like Irish Americans, this, that, and the other, but specifically the way that they use the terms African American or Negro or whatever, it's as if it's to make sure that we never, ever, ever really hone into the fact that our might and our opportunity and our birthright is as Americans. And if you really want to go into Pan-Africanism, and if you really go into, you know, the power of black people throughout the globe, or people non-white, or whatever you want to define it as, yeah, black-skinned people in the United States of America are the most powerful in the entire world, because we are in the most powerful country in the world. We as citizens, we have equal right to the privileges and the rights and the power of the United States of America. Yes, there are black people everywhere, but again, they are not citizens until they become citizens of said country. And so, you know, there's a lot of, you know, criticism and critique and ire and anger around our president and what he said or what he didn't say or what he tweeted or he didn't do and all that stuff. At the end of the day, like, you have to know. I mean, I know you know, as listeners of the Kevin Jackson Show, you know the real and what's not. But why the heck don't everybody else understand it? And again, like, I mean, we're going to have to take another break in the next minute, but the next hour, I'd like to sort of break down where we go from where we have been. If we have 3 generations of generational poverty from the growth of the big government and the welfare state and the degradation of society and breaking down of family and culture and community and you know, self-worth, value, all these different things. What do we do in 2018 in light of a overt resistance movement? What do we do as patriots, as proud Americans, as non-leftists? Let's be honest, it's not just conservatives that we have to worry about. We are talking about the sanctity and the future of our country. Our country, regardless of what your skin color is, what gender you are, what you gender identify with, what religion you are, what religion you don't practice, all these different things. What power are we missing when we don't identify as Americans first?
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Hello, fellow patriots. You are listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I am your guest host, Liz Matory. Thank you so much for checking us out today. This is our second hour, and the first hour I was able to break down why the heck you're listening to me and not Kevin. I am guest hosting today. I am the author of Born Again Republican. I am a newfound conservative, and just like you and Kevin, I am joining you on this mission to encourage, if not inspire, if not yell at the top of our lungs for folks to know what the left is doing. So in turn, because I came relatively new to this game, I've been very adamant about, like, why the heck don't more people, particularly more people of color, more women, all the identity politics people, why don't they get it? You know, like, the moment that you start thinking and seeing things the way that I'd seen them, you know, you're like, whoa, dude, like, you're not seeing how manipulated all of this stuff is and how, like, we're being taken for granted and all that stuff. And, you know, I think at first I was, like, really frustrated because I'm like, why is this happening? But I do think that more people are paying attention. I don't know, you think about it, you know, like, there's all these articles now. I think they're hilarious. There was a Washington Post article this week about, you know, how many, you know, black Americans are stepping up to the Democrat Party, and they're running challenge candidates, and they're wanting to find, you know, a better voice, a stronger voice for their principles. But nowhere in that article were they talking about all the different black conservatives like me who voluntarily left the party and are vocal about it. I'm not the only youngish black woman who is sick and tired of our former party. And if anything, you know, if there is a story to be made, yeah, I'm just saying, you know, like, how I was raised, how liberal I was raised, just like maybe some of you out there, many of you out there, they don't want us to know about each other. So that's why they ridicule, that's why they bully, that's why they call us names. And it's like, you know, maybe it's because I didn't grow up in an environment that I was really bullied, that it's really kind of an extreme experience to feel like for the first time you're bullied as an adult by other adults. And in many respects, my former classmates. I had mentioned this before, but I went to Howard Law, graduated in 2006. I loved it. You know, if anything, it was, again, a homecoming. My father graduated from Howard University undergrad and medical school. I grew up on the university campus. Both my parents worked at the hospital, so I'm like when I tell you I grew up in it, I really did. You know, Black intelligentsia, all of it. It was my norm. So because of that, and the only reason why I mention all that is because, you know, the whole civil rights stuff was like a birthright to me. I am very I've had enough of the sort of the faux fight that people act like they have, because, you know, they weren't about the business years ago. And the only time that they are carrying, black, white, otherwise, is now that the cameras are on. And even if you go back as to, you know, the original issues around police brutality, you know, we have to admit there has been quite a few iterations of said abuse of power, which I do believe that some people do. You know, we love the men and women in blue, but we all know that with great power comes great responsibility. But right, if you weren't a part of that struggle from before and you just showed up and you're old enough to know better, you're doing it for an inauthentic reason. And again, I get a lot of flack for talking about, you know, these, some people use the word false flag. I don't quite understand the term itself, so I don't really use it as much. But again, because I know some of the folks that are involved, you know, if anything, what they are, they're events. You know, they are events that help make the case, make the agenda. And what is the agenda? It depends upon who you ask. The people who live near me, again, in the suburban areas of the District of Columbia, the limousine liberals, the folks who kind of love to talk about diversity and how they're all great, but, you know, when push comes to shove, they're the ones that are the most racist people you ever meet. But I digress. Some of them think that they want to destroy our sovereignty. I remember the first time I was able to see this up close was the first time I participated in a sanctuary city discussion. I was, for the first time, I was the conservative on the panel. It was an NPR thing with Kojo Nnamdi, right? So, I was so excited, Kojo Nnamdi. There'd be an interview and a panel discussion. I was the conservative, and one of my actually former friends was an undocumented, and I guess he still is undocumented. I don't know. So, long story short, I was making the case. I don't think anything that I said, and it's online, you can check it out yourself. I don't think I said anything that was racist, bigoted, or whatever. I was just talking about how our country has rules. We have definitions. Immigrant is a word. Illegal alien is another word. And if you overstay your visa or do not have permission to work here, all of that, by definition, is unlawful. You know? We can talk about that whole another hour, if you will. But so I remember one of the questions that came up from the audience was talking about oh, you know, there are no illegal people. You know, that whole thing. There are no illegal people. Well, nobody is talking about their humanity. We're just talking about their permission and their right to be in the country and, of course, take over our, you know, our own government. Anywho, that kid, 20-year-old kid, was oh yeah, you know, of course I want a borderless country. And ever since I heard that, I'm what is a borderless country? Maybe y'all know, maybe you can help me out and understand what the heck, how a country can be borderless. But from that moment on, I was there's something there. I think there's a full-on effort by some people out there that honestly, sincerely want to destroy this country, because ultimately speaking, it is a powerful creation.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful 4-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, fellow patriots. You're listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. This is Liz Matory, your guest host this day, actually. 3 hours. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to say again, shout out to Kevin Jackson for this awesome experience. It's really wonderful to connect with you over the amazingness of internet radio. So again, case in point, media, right? We're talking about agendas. We're talking about what the heck the left is doing. And quite frankly, how important it is for us everywhere in this country, regardless of what your background is, how you got here. If you are listening to this show or any of the shows like this, you are a part of the mission, right? Talked about it before. My mission is to get either people to leave the Democrat Party, definitely become Republicans, and I know that's a big ask, or at the very least become independent. Again, like people talk, like labels and, I'm a Democrat, da-da-da-da. Well, I'm just going to tell you this right now, from my experience, from what I know, from my work, years of work in the Democrat Party, what you think is a Democrat Party, your party, and your parents' party does not exist anymore. I don't know if enough people know that, I don't know. I mean, it's like there's a public persona of what people think is the Democrat Party, and then there's like the skeleton of it. And shout out to Donna Brazile, for real. I know her book came out a while ago. Kid you not, man, when I talk about these events that they're talking about, they, and I mean the left or whomever established, I don't know what they are. I really don't care what they are. But there is a group of people out there, hundreds of them, I don't know, 100 of them, 10 of them, I don't care how many they are, but they are very powerful and they are afraid of the rest of us. They are absolutely positively afraid of the fact that American citizens took the chance, took the risk, took the opportunity, and took the right to vote for our president. They never planned on our president. This again goes back to their agenda. If they never ever expected Donald Trump to become president, and they totally, up until the end, assumed that Hillary Clinton would be president, none of the stuff that we hear and see, and they're flex, right? all of this like Russian probing and intelligence hacks and spying on American citizens, we would have never heard about it, y'all. Like, seriously. And the fact that at least we are aware of it, that is what's amazingly interesting about this time. Again, talk about 2018, we talk about midterms, we talk about the importance of getting out there, draining the swamp. We cannot drain the swamp. Brother Man cannot drain the swamp by himself. You see how strong, adamant, they will fight tooth and nail to keep their power. The only reason why they are afraid, and again, using these events to make us afraid, is the fact that we are absolutely powerful. The cards that we're dealt, the power is within us as American citizens to change the game. That's the cool thing about our Constitution. That's the cool thing about, realizing what conservatism is and realizing that you don't have to look outside of yourself for an ability to create change. It's well within you. You grow up believing in God and you believe in faith, but when you are tested and you realize that, no amount of government programming or system or whatever is going to help you, and you quiet yourself and you pray, like, it's super cool. Like, I'm in this whole like tip, man. Maybe my moment really, really was September 11th. I went to New York. I went to Columbia, New York. I went to school at Columbia in New York City. I lost one of my friends in September 11th. We were absolutely shell-shocked, not gonna lie. Like, that's the reason why I don't live in New York City to this day. Not only is it a hella expensive place to live, and I don't like the smell of pee in the middle of the summer. That's a whole other story. I digress. So 9/11 definitely happened, but think about what happened afterwards. We pushed one of several of the most draconian laws, the Patriot Act, to basically, in light of, fighting terrorism or, making sure the next 9/11 doesn't happen again. The Congress, our Congress, crafted, enforced laws that allow for, spying of American citizens, like what we're seeing now, that they basically, again, like, you can't even just say the leftists now. That's Bush administration. I don't know where we are on the whole Bush administration thing, but it's like A plus B equals C, y'all. Like, seriously, they wouldn't have been able to do any of the stuff that we're hearing about if it weren't for if it weren't for the Patriot Act. Again, if it weren't for the huge major event of 9/11. And talk about agenda, we now are having these huge refugee crises where, we can't even talk about, our concerns about the people who are, coming into our country and or the West. Let's face it, it's not a racial thing. It absolutely is a cultural thing. We have different values. We believe that, when you rape a woman, like, it's not a good thing. In some of the cultures, women not only don't have rights, they don't have a voice, they don't have ability to even, to know that activity is not okay. Unfortunately, even in a place like Maryland, in a place like Baltimore, we are hearing about honor killings. Guys, like, what is going on? Like, they're talking about acid attacks in Minnesota and in Minneapolis. How are we as American citizens? What are we doing about this? Our government, and again, like, there's a reason why we have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, the vow, the sort of the oath that we take in onto our Constitution, by the grace of God, is to make sure that we uphold the values and principles that we want to aspire to and live by. I don't think honor killing should be allowed in the context of Sharia law. These things cannot, jibe together. They're literally they're not even oil and water. They're whatever substance definitely doesn't jibe with the other substance. They're that. And in a minute we're going to have to take a little break. Wow, these sessions are like going back to back, man. It's when you get into it, you can really get into some sort of flow. But again, like, we have to be really mindful of what is happening, and sometimes they're doing things to take away our rights. If you take 9/11 as an example, and you take the Patriot Act as an example, if you take mass shootings as an example, or events that utilize weapons, firearms as an example, please be mindful of what sort of laws they're trying to do now.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, fellow patriots. You're listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm Liz Matory, your guest host, and thank you again for sticking in with us. Yeah, so we're talking about agenda. We're talking about the left. They're talking about whoever you want to call it. They're all these different events that we're seeing, whether it's mass shootings or whatever they want to call them. Even, I would argue, the DACA situation or the illegal, unlawful entrance events are honestly to craft, or I guess take away from the rights of the citizens. And I wanted to kind of share with you for a moment some precedent. I also work in public relations. I have my MA from Maryland, and we study, I hate to say that it all boils down to marketing, but marketing has a lot to do with what we are witnessing out there in the hinterlands. So if you want to read books, if you want to get more of the sort of the source of it all, definitely recommend 3 specific books to kind of get a sense of context. The Crowd, a study of the popular mind by Gustave Le Bon, Crystallizing Public Opinion by Edward Bernays, and Propaganda, also by Edward Bernays. And again, when you break down the difference between, I guess, the rest of us and them, conservatives believe in the power of the individual. The other folks believe in the power of the government or the group. It's very hard. Think about your group of friends. Back in the day, before you actually had friends that had diverse opinions, and instead of having, what we have now is just everybody thinks the same thing, and we all have to be mindful of it. Right. So when you have a group of friends or your family, and everybody has their own different opinions. They're all individuals. Everybody has, their own personalities, this, that, and the other. Decision-making is difficult. There might be some similarities. Some people might want Chinese food. Some people might want Italian, but everybody has their own opinion as to what sort of food they want to eat for dinner. You have to have a conversation. You got to weigh the principles. You got to weigh the price, all these different things. Eventually, that group of people are going to make a decision after sharing their difference of opinion. Or they won't. Maybe they'll order from different places, what have you. But if you are going to try to get that group of people, even though they are individuals, to make a decision almost immediately without thinking, you have to cut them away from being individuals and shift them into a group. Because ultimately your goal is to control their opinion. You want to control their activity. So that's what we're watching. I mean, at the end of the day, you are witnessing real time the manipulation of society. And I think, in my opinion, everything's happening in breakneck speed, because the more that our president and other people like him are looking under the mattress, if you will, or under the rug or whatever, looking for, in scrutinizing what has happened, I do believe that they don't want us to find out what they've been doing. And so in order for us to be distracted, The classic is divide and conquer, right? And how do you, again, divide folks in a way to control them? One of the classic examples of how people bond is usually through religion or culture. But because Western civilization has developed in a way, there's a lot of, continuity there. We've developed in a way to have certain principles over the last, millennia, if you will. But if you notice the rapid sort of degradation of our relationship to religion and or God, I would argue that these two things are happening at once. It is easier to manipulate people if they don't have a good foundation. I was raised Catholic. I mean, obviously, Lord knows the Catholic Church has had our fair share of issues, I'm not going to lie, but, you have a certain set of principles and you live by them and you try to live by them, but you have context. But if you don't have any context whatsoever, and not only that, you only believe in this world or this life, and you only think that man or humans or men are in control and therefore are solely responsible, you end up doing things or believing things that you don't have a conscience. Everybody has a conscience, but your values and your morals sort of craft and hone how you live your life, and not only how you live your life, but how you interact and interface with others. A new sort of philosophy that I am learning about more so now than before is libertarianism. And I know this is a little tangent, but it is what it is. We'll get back to what we were talking about before, but libertarians are wonderful people. I don't know all of them, but I value the fact that they believe that certain people can, do and say what they want and live how they want as long as they don't hurt anybody. But again, if you don't have the same values and principles and standards that other people have, it is very hard to just live free and flighty. The other extreme is the leftist bit, where they don't think that individuals have the ability to control and constrain themselves and have a sense of responsibility. So instead of having that individual liberty and control, they think that the government has to do it. So again, the things that we have to remind our fellow travelers that don't quite understand why we are conservatives now, push back on them and say, okay, do you want the individuals to figure this out for themselves in their own way, in their own ability, or do you think that we're too dumb to figure it out ourselves and we need the government to do it? That is a huge bit of the agenda, that they, want us to be comfortable losing our sense of self. And again, the more that they push this, I do believe that more of us are going to begin to wonder and question what we're seeing. As we all know, the classic or the traditional media sources are dwindling. And just like anything, what bleeds, it leads, and what shock and awe, that's why their industry is based on the suffering of others. How sick and sad is that? Think about it. What we're seeing now, I mean, we're sad that every day, every hour, and there's just something else going on. And you literally have to wonder, there has to be another source of might out there than man. I mean, if we were to only depend on our own limitations, we would be lost. But again, that's the cool thing about us conservatives, is that we know that we're not in this by ourselves, and that we have the ability to live out our lives by the grace of God and be able to figure out how we can, navigate the world in a better way. The left doesn't have that. I mean, that's the freaky weird thing about it. I know for a fact that my congressman is an atheist. And I know a lot of folks don't like to talk about religion or lack of religion, but I don't understand atheism. And I have to admit to that. I don't understand how you can govern in a Judeo-Christian place without believing in the God that most of the country believes in. But then again, what does one do when one of the most powerful people, and maybe several others in our government, don't believe the values that most of the country believes in? What do we do about it then? So if you want to include in the agenda, part of the agenda is to take us away from our belief in God. That was another interesting moment where a lot of the Democrats that I was able to connect with before I left the party, they are concerned that in a place like Maryland, the Democrat Party has gotten so far left that they felt like they couldn't believe in God and be proud Christians and still be Democrats, because the Democrats are forcing hyper-liberal, extremist, agenda-driven legislation, especially in a place like Maryland, outside the context of the most important sort of guide to one's life. And they'll say, separation of church and state. I think that's like a bogey on that one, because I feel like that is a way for them to take us from our own mark. We'll take a little break now, and we'll talk more about these agenda-driven events. And you'll let us know what you think about all these things.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Hey, fellow patriots, you're listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. This is Liz Matory, your guest host for today. And again, thank you so much for checking in and sticking with us. Really do appreciate your support. So let's get back into it. So we were talking about, the actual use of propaganda and, getting some more context as to what we're seeing. I just wanted to share with you a couple of, quotes from these books that I had mentioned before. This one is, as I said, The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. Just think about this stuff. It's like amazing, right? When you consider the fact that when a person enters a crowd, quote, his intellectual standard is immediately and considerably lowered. I mean, dude, the guy's really breaking down the reality of it all. Before it says the progressive growth of the power of the masses took place at first by a propagation of certain ideas which have slowly implanted themselves in men's minds, and afterwards by a gradual association of individuals bent on bringing about a realization of theoretical conceptions. Let's take 2A. I think that that's a big thing that we've been talking about for quite some time. If you have a constitutional right that's been in there since, the 1700s, and all of a sudden now you're wanting to get rid of it, think about what they're doing. And again, I welcome it. Not necessarily, I really don't want people to die, I really don't. But the more that folks push on the NRA, I'm a member of the NRA, by the way, and I don't mind stating that. First of all, I didn't even know that we got all these discounts, man. I was like, what? We got discounts just because of membership? I didn't know about that. Anyway, Oh, well. Yeah, the more that the left pushes this agenda, they, I think, are hitting our own valuable citizenship too hard. I would say 2A in taking away our right to defend ourselves equitably. For example, like if we are supposed to arm ourselves against, overzealous government, and if the government has, they always talk about the AR-15. Okay, if the government has an AR-15 and you have like a Beretta, no offense to Beretta, but you have a handgun, they have an AR-15, who's winning that battle? I mean, people forget, like, I'm not trying to say that, individual citizens need like tanks and stuff, but the whole point is to be able to defend yourself from harm. One of my friends has her own ammunition company here, and she talks about, the importance of women being armed. And she says, it's not an assault rifle, it's a defense rifle. Again, we got to get better at how we use language. The left, they're so good at it. They are so good at using words and galvanizing, power around them, getting, again, the crowd to think and move the direction that they want. We have to kind of use the same similar tactics in order to get rid of or negate the impact that the left already has on our society. So case in point, if they say assault rifle, assault rifle, assault rifle, we say back to them, you mean a defense rifle, a defense rifle, a defense rifle. Most of us, 99.99% of law-abiding citizens become well-trained, aren't using these because they want to run around killing people. Why are we making laws that, people have said this before, but we have to reiterate it and repeat it over and over and over again. Any law, any change of law is only going to affect the rest of us, not the people who want to do harm. Case in point, I live in a sanctuary county called Montgomery County. We, next week, are actually going to testify in Annapolis to block once again our state becoming a sanctuary state. These leftists, kid you not, have taken over our state so much that I hope that your states out there are not in the position that we are here in Maryland. Kid you not. Like, you can't even make an argument, a statement, sort of very neutral about how much of an amazing impact unlawful entrants have made to a society. Again, you don't know how many people are here that there aren't supposed to be here. That's not a racist statement, that's a fact. And you have, let's say you have some, legislators or elected officials who, they want to win, they want to stay where they are. And so, and by the way, they already have the black vote in their pocket. What do? They pander. The word that I love to call is hispandering. Remember when Hillary was talking about her abuela, or she's an abuela? I'm like, girlfriend, you ain't an abuela. It's okay. Anyway, sorry. Golly. That's the reason why we weren't with her. Anyway, so you take unlawful entrants, you take illegal aliens, you take, the message there is, there's no unlawful or illegal humans, we have to have compassion. Shoot. The reason why I'm still searching for a congregation is because in my Catholic church, the one that I go to every day, every Sunday, they talk about, how we need to make sure that we have immigration. People, immigration is an actual thing. Like my mom and my aunt and my uncle, they came over here legally from the Philippines. Nowadays, it takes 24 years to come here from the Philippines. So are you telling me that my Filipino friends and my, the people who want to come here now, they have to wait 24 years, but these mamma jammas can stay here for 24 years and, oh, by the way, get granted citizenship with a freaking snap of a finger? Like, the hypocrisy of the left is real, and we need to push back. Again, that's the reason why more of us, quote unquote, people of color, need to educate ourselves and stand firmly in our principles, because we need to make the case, because our voices are the ones that have been marginalized by the left. You know, think about it. If you go back to, again, the founding of the Republican Party, and the reason why my book is called Born Again Republican is that blacks, you know, former slaves, freed people, you know, were Republicans initially. We were never meant to be Democrats in the first place. We only started becoming Democrats in the 60s, and you all know this. And again, if you want to trace back to when and how and why our society got screwed up, and I'm talking about everybody, not just black folks, it goes back to that moment. And now that we have millions of folks who are now trying to make all the rest of us second-class citizens, oh, by the way, because when they break our rules and they rape and pillage, they get let go on a bond of $1,500, and then we are like rotting in prison or rotting in jail with a $25,000 bond. I mean, we as the other marginal, I don't know, these words are just so bogus, but you know what I mean. The people of color, if you're going to talk about people of color, and you're talking about citizenship, and you're talking about equity, you talk about, you know, like equal rights, then bring it. You know, we know that we have been suffering under certain, you know, lack of equality for several different many things. Why are we now all of a sudden allowing for people who don't have right and permission to be in this country literally get away with murder? That's how bad it is here in Maryland. You know, like, we need, or in California, for gosh sakes. You know, that is what happens when we do not have a strong counterweight. That is the reason why we as conservatives, it's the reason why, yes, as Republicans, more of us need to challenge the system. More of us need to run for office. You know, I decided last month to throw my hat back in the ring, because we will be losing our country, because, again, they are winning the messaging war. They are winning the, you know, hearts and minds war. And we are sort of thinking that we have all the time in the world, but we really, really don't. You know, like, we actually have the votes on our side. They cannot win national elections. That literally is the reason. I've seen the numbers. I've been in the rooms. You know what I mean? They whiteboarded out, they put out percentages, and they know that they've lost average American votes. Voters do not vote for them anymore. Americans don't vote for Democrats anymore on a national scale. And so what they do, and all they want to do, is impeach our president and get back the power that they lost immediately. They are willing to do anything and everything in their power. They are willing to destroy our country in order to get their power back.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Hey, fellow patriots, and welcome back to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm Liz Matory, your guest host for today. I know that a lot of you have been in this fight for way longer than I have, and again, like, thank you so much for fighting the good fight. You know, like I now know, it is our country, it is our values, it is our principles, it is our, it's our God that is literally at risk of being lost. I mean, God's not going to be lost, but, you know, the concept of the power, the might, the importance of said belief is definitely being ridiculed and tarnished over the last several different decades. Folks and supporters of Kevin Jackson know that, you know, it's now or never for us to really step up and speak out way more vigilantly and strongly than we've ever before about our principles. I don't know about you, but kid you not, the biggest pushback I get about being a new conservative or black Republican or what have you are definitely from fellow Black people and my classmates. Highly educated, so much negativity, honestly, coming from some of my closest friends. I don't want to get into it, but, things have gotten so bad that I'm now not allowed to go to family functions anymore on my mother's side. They took a vote, right? As of Thanksgiving, Liz Matory is persona non grata in the family. Not in most of my family, and quite frankly, not in the Black side of the family. But yeah, the group that grew up in a hyper-liberal environment well within the belly of the beast and the DC metro region, yeah, I'm going to just tell you right now, my family, some of my family members have, I'm not going to name names because they're private citizens, but all the more reason what has happened to my family has happened to a lot of families around the country. And it's really sad. It's really hurtful. And we have to realize that it's not even on the individual level anymore. It really, really, really is beyond the control of the individual at this time. We're talking about folks who are highly educated. They spend a lot of time. They're very learned, if you will. But what are we learning? What are we watching? What sort of media outlets are we literally turn on and we're basically ingesting without even thinking? And I wanted to quickly, share with you some of these, quotes from these seminal books when it comes to crafting public opinion. The whole concept of news is to manufacture it. It's about orchestrating occurrences that will attract news coverage and will be viewed by the public as current events. That's a quote from Crystallizing Public Opinion from Edward Bernays. Again, the whole concept is to create startling facts that, present them as news, and develop them into events. Kid you not, guys, there is a concerted effort out there to control what they call the masses. Quote, people will vehemently cling to the stereotypes that that comprise the foundation of their universe, even when they are patently erroneous. Again, I've lost a lot of friends just by virtue of being a Republican. Oh, definitely, by far, absolutely. And I'm sure you are out there too. If you're a Trump supporter, there are a boatload of people that don't talk to you anymore. And so what does that mean? What people are willing to give up on their friendships and their bonds and their family members because of it. And how do they not see the values and principles that we are governing on in a kind of visceral sense are not based on natural law? And again, we as Christians, we as conservatives, we as non-leftists need to really be mindful of the fact that we are being manipulated. Again, let's see, case in point. And I talk about the Confederate statues all the time because it was really you could watch it like real time, how bogus these events really are. So the quote is from this time, Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Quote, touch a nerve at a sensitive spot and you get an automatic response from certain specific members of the organism. So take that just simple sentence and think about the different events, quote unquote, events that occur. If you want a specific desired response and you've already molded the minds of the community, society through mass media, definitely through entertainment, absolutely positively through education. And again, going back to my former classmates, the more education you have, you're even more indoctrinated into it. I mean, think about it. You got most of your life you were in school. Now that we all know that, universities are overrun and taken over by before when I was in school and at Columbia, they were left-leaning, absolutely. But there was some variety. You would breaking down concepts. That was the whole point of college. That's what they were there for, But it seems as if we don't have that anymore. And that is such a disservice to society, right? Again, a lot more strategic on our side. You guys have been doing this for an awesome amount of time. We have to ramp it up though. If they are willing to kill people or get people killed in order to take away our guns, or if they are willing to degrade our citizenship or degrade legal immigration status because they are desperate for people to vote for them, and therefore they encourage, people who are unlawful entrants and illegals and people who are non-citizens to register to vote. Oh, that's what they do with those motor voter files. But guess what? You don't speak English, so it's hard for you to even understand and comprehend what the heck's going on when you bring it up. Oh yeah, you're the R word. Shoot, R word meaning Republican and or racist. It's just so excruciating to I will never ever go back to the left. And again, I'm so I praise God every day that I was able to leave when I did. And I know that you out there have that moment too, where you're like, oh gosh, would you rather know than not know? I would say I'd rather know. Obviously I miss my family. Absolutely. I miss my, especially the little ones. It's kind of sad that they think that conservative or what have you, I shouldn't be around their children. That's how sad and sick this society is getting. And again, it's not us. It's the other guys. So what do we do about it? I don't want to give up on my family. I forgive them. I'm not going to forget what's happened. I do think that there is going to be a sense of more of an awakening.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful 4-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome, fellow patriots. You're listening to The Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I am your guest host, Liz Matory, today. Thank you so much for being so awesome. Honestly, I've only joined this fight 2 years ago. 2-3 years ago, when I started to see the light, if you will. I began to think for myself. All these different sort of catchphrases that I remember hearing for the first time over the last few years. I'm like, why do people keep on saying that? Why do they keep on saying, oh, think for yourself, or, oh, you're being really brave, or, it's absolutely fascinating to be on this side of things. I mean, go back to it. I mean, this is what we really need to do. You know, we now know what we know. We need to share it in every single ability, capacity, opportunity, regardless of how we think we are going to be received. Obviously, you want to be, cordial, and you want to be offensive and all that stuff. But shoot, if you're just by virtue of you being who you are without even saying a word, you being an American who chooses an alternative party, which is the other dominant party, like, I mean, I was going to say stupid, but how ridiculous is all the stuff that's happening now? So all the more reason, now or never, we got to stand up and speak up for our principles. All of us. We need all of us to be counted, if you will. This is the time where we can't hide. We cannot sort of shy away from the movement or again, like our patriotism, because that's what they want. That's the reason why they ridicule us. That's the reason why they bully us. And like, before I get to the Me Too conversation, because I guess we need to talk about it, and I don't mind, giving my 2 cents, 3 cents, or what have you. So this, transition, this rebirth that I'm going through in the last couple of years, there are a lot of words that I really hadn't heard of, or, that they exist, but they're thrown around now, like, all the time. And so one of those words that I kind of wanted to look at, because it's being used a lot in the last couple of years, is the word bigot. Like, that word literally got, like, reborn over the last 2 years, and it's kind of creepy that people are using it again. But yeah, bigot, B-I-G-O-T, right? So I went, in the fanciness of the internet, looked at, Merriam-Webster. I think that was the first, dictionary, tool that popped up. I looked it up. So this is the definition of the word bigot, the favorite word of the left, one of the favorite words of the left. Quote, a person who is a person who is intolerantly devoted to his or her own opinions and prejudices, especially one who regards or treats the members of a group, racial/ethnic normally, with hatred or intolerance. Bigotry is intolerant devotion to one's own opinions and prejudice or state of mind. I think that deserves repeating again, because I like to read through it and kind of think, while I read through this definition, and you think of the definition of the word bigot, who do you think does that describe? I'm just asking. I'm not going to say it because, it is what it is. It's kind of blatant. I'm just going to give you the definition, and you put 2 and 2 together, okay? So the definition, according to Merriam-Webster, of the word bigot is a person who is intolerantly devoted to his or her own opinions and prejudices, especially one who regards or treats the members of a group with hatred or intolerance. Bigotry is the intolerant devotion to one's own opinions and prejudices, a state of mind. I also wanted to look up the word that I wanted to figure out what I was witnessing. And the word that popped into my head was the word hypocrisy. So let's see what Merriam-Webster says hypocrisy means. Hypocrisy: behavior that contradicts what one claims to believe or feel. A hypocrite is a person who puts on a false appearance of virtue. Virtue signaling. I did not look that term up, but that is used a lot, and we are sort of seeing that play out in real time. And maybe that's kind of like where we should go back to the Me Too conversation. So with the term hypocrisy and hypocrite, a person who puts on a false appearance of virtue, let's talk about the Me Too stuff. Okay. We already, for the last hour, have been talking about the use of events to be able to galvanize public opinion in order to create a certain agenda-driven concept to get individuals to, craft the way that they think in a very sort of subliminal way for them to do something that the people who are trying to control it, for those people to control the others, right? So if you say you want to deflect sort of something that happened in 2016, you put all your ducks and all your millions of dollars into an outcome that did not exist, and everything was surrounded by gender or, women or what have you, knowing that women are actually half of the population, and a bunch of them voted for the person that you didn't expect them to vote for. So what do you do when you lose? You blank and complain about it, yes, and you create a fabricated resistance movement to, again, galvanize said support in order to take away from or change the outcome. You can't change the outcome of an election, but I guess you can, according to some folks, but it is what it is. I digress. So you create events. Unfortunately, this hashtag #MeToo movement, just like it was with the Women's March, just like which it was with, the shootings, unfortunately, all these things are events in order to create something, not to address something. I got to take a quick break for, the little breaks that we have to take during these sessions, but in the last several, minutes, we are going to discuss how the #MeToo movement is another use of an event to push an agenda, and one of the agendas is to oust our president. Again, thank you so much for checking in and checking out this guest host of yours. One of my former friends, one of my advisors when I was making the transition over from independent to Republican, he would say, Liz, you're just one person. What sort of difference do you think you're ever going to make? And that's the great thing about the time we're in now. We all can contribute in some way, whether it's here, whether it's there, whether it's in your communities. We've got to speak up.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Hello, fellow patriots. You're listening to The Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. I'm Liz Matory, your guest host, and thank you again for hanging in with me today. So let's get back to this Me Too movement. A lot of people have talked about it. I'm just going to take my personal stab at it. I'm not going to lie. So I had told you that, I grew up with Chelsea, like 2 degrees of separation. Like one of my friends is one of her friends, what have you. She's a year ahead of me, though she is younger than me in age. And so when the Monica Lewinsky, President Clinton stuff happened, so I had no idea what all that stuff was, because I was a late bloomer. I didn't know but all that stuff that we heard in the news, we were a little bit more innocent back then as a society, and definitely as me as an individual. But I had to ask my dad what all this was about. It was just so weird. I mean, if you think about it, Monica is only 3 years older than us. So again, now that I'm now 38 years old, looking back at it, I already knew that was wrong. Now that we have been interns and, now been supervisors of said interns and, power dynamics, the President of the United States did what? And so all the people who talk about, can you, how dare you support President Trump? He said these things on a bus. Oh, by the way, when he said he was a Democrat, but whatever. Honestly, in 1998, when I was a senior in high school, that episode of history, personal history, whatever, really changed my perspective, and I'm sure it changed other women in my generation and others perhaps older and younger, of what really is out there. That was our huge lesson. Not only was it, hornbag, unfortunately, that's sad to say that it's a term that I used for one of my classmates' fathers, but it is what it is. I mean, it's not even necessarily like the actual acts or the potential of said, but it's the cover up. And again, coming from the previous segment, the hypocrisy. Again, when you are supposedly the party of women's rights, and you, as a unit, defend and protect a sexual predator, you literally have zero credibility in my world, and I'm sure in other people's world. So all this stuff, all these things, these Me Too, #MeToo movement is literally at least 25 years late. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I was 18 when that stuff came to fruition. And we know that his activity, you're only talking, I'm not trying to pick on former President Clinton, right? But I know for a fact that when we danced together at graduation, it was a little creepy, not gonna lie. I knew then that he was a little too slick for someone's father. So Weinstein, all these different people, and it's not limited to men in power. Women in power also take advantage of their power and take advantage of subordinates and people who might have their careers at stake. All of it is just, it really, really goes back to the fact that if anyone really cared this whole time, they would have done something when the cameras weren't on. When you hear, personally, I mean, as a woman in a professional environment, even as a school environment, you're always on guard. You always kind of have to, again, like, know your worth, know your self-value, know what you are comfortable with and what you aren't comfortable with. Some people like flirting. Yeah, sure. Like, you can flirt if that's what you're comfortable with, but are there different dynamics when other factors are in place? Absolutely. Especially when there's like a freaking 30-year difference between a person who is the leader of the free world and an intern. I mean, and you expect us to, rally their troops and be against the president of the United States now because you guys screwed up back then. And we literally do not have patience for your hypocrisy anymore. I remember when I was at one of my former jobs, one of my coworkers, technically I outranked him, but as talk about wage disparities, we all knew that he was paid more than all of the directors who happened to be women. We all knew that he was paid more, number one. And unfortunately, my absolute boss was a woman, and that's a whole nother story. But I remember him coming into my office and sitting on my desk next to me while I was sitting on my chair. Nothing happened, but even the proximity and the sort of overt statement of getting in my personal space bothered me. I mean, I mentioned it to my immediate supervisor, and, she said, yeah, like that guy has a tendency of, being a little too slick. I mean, it's not just the media. It's not just, Hollywood. It's not just politics. It's mamma jammas, men and women who are horrible human beings for just, whether it's getting into somebody's purposeful space to, you know, create a sense of like power struggle or grab or whatever, or to, you know, take advantage of someone, or to literally, you know, physically harm someone or psychologically harm someone. It happens so often. But the thing that we have to be mindful of is that we as women, or we as men, but we as the person who is going to be like, or potentially be harmed in a way, we're not helpless. You know, at the end of the day, you have to figure out, what are you willing to stay in that job? Are you willing to have that promotion? Are you willing to have that role? Are you for what? You know, like, I don't think that I think I should backtrack. I think that there are more options now for you to not have to settle for malarkey. I believe that if we have a strong enough system, a judicial system, that if something has occurred, you go to the authorities about it. You know, like, and yes, when you are a supervisor, which a lot of us women are, when you're a supervisor and one of your people on your staff come with you with a complaint, don't ignore it. You know, we shouldn't need, and we definitely don't need, this #me movement for us to do something about it and for us to be aware of it. Because I said before, yeah, President Clinton really, he gave me a lot of preparation to make sure that I was aware of folks like him. Do you know how sad that is? You know, whereas I'm with her, you know, Democrat nominee Hillary Clinton, literally that's why your hypocrisy, your singular hypocrisy of two individuals, of two American citizens, of two public figures, of two, you know, supposed leaders of our community, society, etc. Your credibility is literally gone. And again, that has literally nothing to do with our current president, President Trump. A statement, or, you know, I don't know, maybe there's whatever has happened. You have already set a precedent, a low set of standards, a lowering of our sort of decorum and demeanor of the leader of the free world, that as long as you continue to create and fabricate these events, this, again, false philosophy, we're seeing you. We're seeing you for what you are. And again, like, it's just ridiculous. And I don't know why people support. There's so many things that are going wrong. What's going to be the last straw for y'all to, like, realize that party, or definitely the leftists, have nothing to offer you? Reality, honor, you know, legality, you know, like, I've had enough with the leftist hypocrisy.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, fellow patriots. You're listening to the Kevin Jackson Show on KJRadio.com. Oh my goodness, this is our last segment together. I'm Liz Matory. I was guest hosting today for Kevin. And again, it has been so amazing and awesome to connect with you today. Hey, if you enjoyed what you heard, if you think I should do it again, please let Kevin know. If I messed up or is there certain things that you wish that I had covered or whatever, please let Kevin know. He can definitely get contact with me. Again, if you want more folks like me to become like me, like if there are people out there in your life that are very curious, if they are looking for like possibilities, new options, a new path, that they've gotten really frustrated with where they are, especially as a Democrat, as a registered Democrat. We tend to be afraid of the Republican Party, and we tend to be afraid of conservatives because of what has been stated about us. Because most people know that we are being defined, all the more reason you and I, and definitely Kevin's been doing this for a while, we need to be a lot more vocal about why someone like us are conservative. I know for a fact, for my own experience, another major difference between the different options is, we tend to be a group of individuals, whereas the left, their own sole purpose is to move the masses and very much agenda driven. Our number one goal is to conserve this republic. By the grace of God, we do believe in the power and might, and we know and we absolutely believe that, especially in this country, as American citizens, whether it's by birthright or by legal means, we are able to, here in this country, in this amazing constitutional republic, the United States of America, you can tap into your God-given potential and thrive. That's it. When I figured out, or people helped me learn what conservatism is and what the Republican Party actually did stand for, instead of all of the misinformation that I was told. I mean, again, talk about, they want to use the word fake news. How about, again, the fake philosophy that the left has created around the rest of us? And we all know that we're good people. So why don't we speak up for why we are conservatives? I think I've heard, several different reasons why someone has made the switch, or maybe they are, lifelong conservatives. But again, because we are the minority party, we, Governor Ehrlich, I wanted to share this information with you before I departed with you from you today. Governor Ehrlich was our former governor here in Maryland, and he spoke with our Central Committee last month here in Montgomery, and he said, the Republican Party has always been the anti-establishment party. We were formed to answer the establishment. The establishment were the Democrats. The Democrats, especially here in Maryland, they are the oldest established organized party in the country. So when we feel like we are going up against, Goliath, we are. And a lot of folks, especially on Facebook, have reached out to me and with words and beautiful words of solidarity and prayer. And they've always, referred back to Christian times. Biblical times. We as, God's children have always been challenged by, the people who kind of forget where their power came from. The people who have acquired some sort of power that they think that there's no consequence to their holding of said power. And, a lot of people believe certain things about our president and his time and all that. But, we all have to realize, what side are we on? We can do better for each other, by each other. We do have to be more mindful. We have to definitely be more spiritual. We definitely have to be more prayerful. Again, like one of my friends said, you cannot, legislate morality. You have to literally, there's government and laws are not the only things that society are there for. There's society, there's the individual, there's the family, there's community, there's neighborhood, there's town. There's all these layers of relatedness that I think, I don't know when it started, but I now know that that's what happens when you kind of deteriorate units. Going back to the family and how important family is and how important my family and upbringing and parents are. It's easier for you to navigate through life when you have a good foundation. You know that. So as a country, as country people, as citizens, we have to be well grounded in our foundation, and our foundation is the Constitution. And yes, the Constitution was, and including the Declaration of Independence, you cannot forget God's connection to that. You have to have one and the other. A lot of people, I think, when you find the chaos and confusion and you find it overwhelming you, it's because you've lost your focus. And I would argue that all the things that are happening in the dissent and the confusion and the anger and the negativity, again, lastly, with Christopher, before he passed away, I saw him around like 10:30, 11, and then he OD'd by like 1:30. He took a hit between the time I saw him and the time that he passed away, but he was talking about how there was this evil spirit that he was always feeling that was surrounding him. And we tend to focus on positivity, and we focus on God, and we definitely know that, humans and, beings and people are, and animals are all around us. But we always forget that there's also evil, and evil's powerful. And without the armor that you need in order to, again, protect yourself from influence, harm, whatever that negative energy is trying to do, we really have to be a lot more vigilant. Again, like, this is not the time to be quiet. This is not the time to hide our conservative principles. This is not the time to, be afraid that, we are conservatives and that we believe in God and that, that is not a bad thing. If anything, the people who are questioning your faith, those are the ones you got to be careful of. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. I mean, it's so blatantly obvious. And that's the thing that's so crazy about, my 2-3 year experience of being a new conservative and a born again Republican. The moment that I figured out what all this was, I'm like, wow, that's really simple. So you're basically just telling me that conservatism is just our founding principles, like they're just American principles, nothing too fancy, nothing too like over the top, and all this other things that I have learned, and again, like, I appreciate individual, sort of what you want to achieve as an individual, as long as you don't harm anyone. Yes, I understand that. But when you have a full-on agenda in order to divide and conquer and confuse and manipulate and, basically take people, might away from them so that you can preserve your power and your control over the masses, we have to stop them. Even if we need to pray for these people, we literally have to say, God bless you. That honestly is like One of the most powerful sort of deterrents of evil is simply saying, God bless you, and I'm praying for you. And in that power and in that might, we're going to win this war. I believe it, and I know that, with people like Kevin on our side, and all of you listeners out there, know that this is a winnable war and we are on the same side of right. So again, thank you so much for connecting and listening and being a part of this movement and this mission, and I'll see you next time.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.